Derek, would you be up for moving on and checking out the CYFD report? And my thought
Sure.
for everybody was that we would look at CYFD today, and maybe we'll have another webinar in a few weeks and look at VOCA and or VAWA. So we'll just kind of work through the reports because that wasn't really in the training that we had in person, and try to get everybody up to speed as we start to generate these things.
hmm
Okay, so CYFD, and I'm not sure in this database, I'm not sure there's much information to look at, but we can at least um, see what it does and change some things and see how it changes. Does that sound reasonable, Derek?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so the CYFD, I don't know if anybody wants to chime in where we should get started. So we have technically three, let's sort these by name. Um, CF and CY. Oh, I hate myself for that. So if we were to run the services report, and just jump in anytime if I should run a different report, the CYFD billing report for services, we're presented with a couple parameters here. So here's the start date to the end date. You can filter by staff, by the services provided, particular clients and children and abusers. It's just giving you some flexibility. Then the one part that might be kind of confusing some people by this being set as true or yes is the include intake / discharge filtering. So the idea behind this report is that it's trying to grab all the services that you provided within the last month based on the date range that we're running right now. But in order for this service to show up, there must be an intake and discharge entry, again, for them to show up. So if we were to run this report, we actually get one person showing up. And what we can do is we can figure out, actually we got 4.5 hours showing up. I'm not sure how many people are in there. But what we can do is say show details equals true or yes. And we can run it. And I have to change it again. But now it shows the three services that are provided. The next part is show client name. So this is where you can print this out and actually submit it to someone. There's no, I would hope that there's no identifying information other than the date of birth, artist ID, and the file ID. So if I say yes to show the names, we now get 2 Jane Does and a test client. So I'm not sure if anybody knew about that. So that's a little bit of debugging, if that's the word to use, try to figure out who's showing up and who's not in some ways. But if we minimize out of here, well, actually, we got 9/3, so August 3rd at 8 p.m. we have test client. Oh, it's too much of a minimize there. So if we go into test client, we have that activity session showing up in here. And the one thing I forgot to mention is the CYFD billing report, the service category needs to be CYFD for it to be even considered, okay? And you'll notice that, well, it's actually out of the date range, but if we go into the intake discharge tab, the activity session is showing up because this person has an intake and discharge during that time. Now, as you can see, my test client has a ridiculous date range from the year 2000 to in the future still. So that's just so the person shows up in the report. But if I was to change this or delete it, for example, and rerun the report, test client would not show up. So I'm going to get to the questions in a moment. If we go back to this report and we change include intake discharge filtering, we change it to false. Again, I don't know the data that I have right now. So let's see if I put my foot in my mouth here. If we hit submit, we now get one extra activity session, most likely because that activity session did not have an intake and discharge during that time. So David, help me out here or confirm this is the way the report is supposed to work. You must have an intake and discharge for them to show up on the CYFD billing report as a service of CYFD.
I think, yeah, well, I think you need to have an intake, or I think that's what it's testing for, that you've done an intake, because that's what Artist requires for you to bill for stuff. So it's a way to double check your own data entry. I'm not sure how the discharge fits into that. I don't remember. It could be that if they've already been discharged through Artist, that you then can't bill either. Um, so we can go back and double check the coding for that. But that's the general idea. And the fact that you can turn it on and off. The idea with all of these CYFD reports, like we can't integrate directly into Artist and download the information yet. Maybe someday we'll be able to go back and say we're all doing the same, using the same data entry and program. Work with us, but that hasn't happened yet. Um, but our idea was to make it look as much like the Artist summary reports as possible, so that you can compare and make sure you build everything into the Artist system. Any questions about that?
So while we get some questions, if I was to close out of this report and open up the stays or open up the calls, pretty much everything would be the same set of rules.
Okay. So let's look. Jess is asking about the stays. So can we look at the stays report? She asked
Yes.
what the best way to enter and report on stays.
Um, Sorry, I might be misunderstanding. Are we looking to run the report or how to
Yeah,
data
let's look
enter?
at CYFD first, and then we can go back to the general stays.
Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit run here with showing details. Okay, that's already set. And I'm going to show name because that's what we're trying to do right now. So what we have here is, let me just minimize this a little bit so we can see a little bit more. What we have here is Jane Doe having a start date of August 1st and leaving, sorry,
September.
September 1st and leaving September 3rd. And you'll notice that there's three categories here: 4 to 12 hours, 13 to 23 hours, and 24 hours. So what it's trying to do here is taking the start date and the end date, including the time, and trying to give you a money value for all of that. So if I open up this parameters here again, wish I didn't close that. I'm just going to slide over a little bit so we can see the end. You'll notice that there's 4 categories over here, for 3 for adults and 1 for child. So if you're an adult and you stayed a full 24 hours or more, you're going to get billed at least $100. Then if you stayed, let's just say, a day and 4.5 hours, you're going to get billed $150, like those kind of ideas. So in this case, we have 13 to 23 hours and a 24-hour period. So that's 100 plus 75 equaling 175. If they were a child, the first moment that they come in to however many days they stay, it's $15 per day.
So any questions about that?
So I'm not sure what.
It's a separate report that you can compare to Artist, because the stays have a additional complexity. So I think to answer Jess's question, can we go back out to the client?
Yes. So if I open up test client and I go to shelter/stays, double click on an existing one just to make it easy for data entry. What we have here is the person that you associate it to, the shelter type. Again, they need to be in the category of CYFD to show up in CYFD reporting. You'll notice that CYFD only has emergency shelter. Then after that, we have the program entry date and time, and then the exit date and time. And as you heard me say a moment ago, the time that they come in and the time that they leave is fairly important for the billing. You know, if there's no funders on the line right now, what we're trying to do is be as accurate as possible to get the most amount of funding that we can, rather than not billing for the extra half day that the person stayed. We're trying to bill for that. If that's not the case, you guys will let me know.
Okay, and Jess is asking, what if they don't exit in that month? Will it still show on the report?
Let me see here. So
I,
this
I,
is the first.
I believe so. I'm pretty sure we went over that.
Yeah, the issue that I have is I don't want to give you false information right now. So that's what it comes down to. If we went back into the CYFD billing report, let's show all the people again. Let's just get back to where we were. This person came in the first and left on the third. That's actually kind of close. So if we were to manipulate these numbers to go from the second to the second now, I'm hoping that we get that. Yeah, so if you came in prior to the reporting or you left after, in which this is satisfying both cases, what we're doing is we're only billing for the time that they were in shelter during the reporting period. So if we ran the previous month's report, I know I'm just running one day, but if we ran the previous month's reporting, we would get that billing, and then we ran today's reporting like we have right now, it would just get that billing, and then we ran after. Everything's segregated. It's smarter, and David and I worked through that before.
And I think if we went
So, yes.
back to the client and deleted their exit date, then it would bill up to the end of the report date.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, I can change it to, say, the 30th of the month, like David said, remove September 3rd, and it'll actually bill from the 2nd to the end of day 30th.
So I think that answers the questions. Right. So yeah, you don't need to clock them out at 11:59 on the last day of the month in order for the report to work. You can just leave it blank. So hopefully you can actually just put in what actually happens with the client, and the report will sort it out for you.
Yes, and if you notice that it's counting too much or too little or whatever it comes down to, what you can do, and this is just a little cheat sheet to help me, is if you had this report and you had it exactly the way it is, go ahead and remove, set show client name to false, rerun it so that we don't see any identifying information. And what you can do is you can send this to a PDF file or Excel or whatever you feel like, and you can email me saying, I have client file ID, this number, I'm reporting from this date to this date, which it actually says it, and I'm getting this many hours and this many days, which is incorrect. And then I can look at this data, I can enter it into my system, run the reports, confirm that you're correct, or try to prove you wrong, I guess, and then make an update to the report if needed. But yeah.
Okay. So any questions out there on this days report for CYFD? And then if you, as Derek went through it, you can bill stays to different funders. So if it's not billed to CYFD, then it won't show up in this report.
That is correct, yes.
So if it's a HUD client in transitional housing, for instance, then you would enter them that way, and they wouldn't show up on the CYFD report.
That's correct. I'm just trying to run a little bit more information here. It doesn't look like we have too much data. Oh, yeah, right. CYFD only has emergency shelter from what I understand. So I'm just going to be quiet. Okay.
And is there, Derek, and I don't know the answer to this question, but is there a stays report that's a master report that doesn't depend on, that's not customized for our funders?
Yes and no. We don't have a perfect report to show exactly what you guys want. I can always go through the effort to create something like that. What we do have is master reports, as I call them. If we opened up master reports stay, we can run the stay report main, okay, just the main report. and you can actually filter by the dates that you want to provide reporting on. I'm just going to go ahead and hit submit and hope we get some details here. Again, this is the demo database. It's been used quite a bit for testing and everything. But essentially, right now what we have is all the stays that we have within, for example, the 93 days that we're reporting. Not much data, sorry about
Right.
that, guys, but you would be able to see that you have Jane Doe, a Derek Harding, and a Henry in here. They came in September 11th, and they haven't exited yet. Derek came in and left, and Jane, there's the Jane that we're looking at before, September 1st is September 3rd, and things like that.
Great. I mean, I just wanted people to see that so that if you're not sure why you're getting the kind of reports you're getting, this is another place you can go to troubleshoot to see all your data and what may have been entered incorrectly.
I might actually have a better solution as well. This might not be as practical as you get more and more data, but if you go to the main menu and you go into lists, what I tried to provide is a full list of what you see here. So all the stays, all the victimizations, all the protection orders, meetings, HUD details, etc. So if I open up the stays over here, and I think I worked through some issues with someone by going to this area, you can now see the 4 stays, and you can see that there was an extra stay that we didn't see in the report because it was outside the reporting date range by, I think, 23 days. No, by 3 days, because it ended on the 20th, and we started on the 23rd. You can now see all your stays in here, and you can actually, okay, well, Henry actually exited a couple days after he came in, so we got some bad data. So what you can do is you can double click on it, and now you're in the stay and you can manipulate the information. I can enter the program exit date and save and close and rerun my reporting as needed.
Excellent. Okay. And then
So
I think there was
go ahead.
one more CYFD report, which is the calls. I'm not sure if we have any calls data, but maybe we could just show that one as well.
Yeah. So if we open up the CYFD billing report for calls, as you can see, most of the stuff looks the same. I'm going to attempt to grab some information by going to the year 2000. I hope you guys don't do that. But essentially, show client data. We have a no-name person, and then we actually have test client showing in there again. And yeah, that's what the report does right now. So let me know.
Okay. And I think that's the simplest of them all. So
Okay,
that's the information that comes from the calls module, right, Derek?
yes, yes. So if we close out of here, let's see here. If we go to test client, we have crisis intervention. That's where it's coming from.
Great. Or if you have an anonymous call, then you enter it through a different way, right? Just to
Yes,
remind
if you
people.
have an anonymous call, so right now we're on a client, meaning if we say new, that client's going to be attached to that new call. However, if you're a call center, you don't get too much information about them. What you can do is go to the main menu and open up crisis intervention contacts. And when you first open it up, it's going to bring you to a brand new call or crisis intervention. And basically, you can fill out the information here. The drop-down associated client is where you can, well, associate the client. If you leave that blank, they're not in the system. It's just a call that took place, and it's going to report on it as needed. So caller name, you can say it was anonymous. In order to save, you must have the service that you provided them, the year of birth, gender, ethnicity, city, county, and Medicaid, because that's what was needed for CYFD.
Great. And you might have funding for these calls through VOCA, for instance, and you would put under the service provided, you would find the appropriate category. And maybe you could you show that just one second?
Yep.
So you would look down under VOCA.
Looks like that's all we have, though.
Click on VOCA on that list.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right. So you might you might choose that as a separate. Anyway, that's an issue with the person entering the data, whether it's an advocate or your data entry person.
So this goes for pretty much anywhere within the software. If you were presented with a huge list, I know this isn't, but you only wanted to see VOCA, you can go to the Find, type in VOCA, hit Enter or the Go button, and it's going to get rid of everything except for the things that contain the word VOCA in it.
Okay, let's see. We have a question. So if we link it to VOCA, we're not going to be able to see it on MFA, for example?
The MFA report is based on stays, just to start with that one. And correct me if I'm wrong, but MFA is looking for anything with the name of emergency shelter.
I think that's right.
So within this list right now, I know I can't show. So if it says the word emergency shelter, in which you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different funding sources, that would show up on the MFA. From my understanding, that's what it needs to be, and you guys will tell me otherwise.
No, that's right. So again, the idea is you can put in the information consistently on your end, and the reports, like MFA is just wondering how much activity was in your program, not what they're paying for. So it's customized to show them all of the calls that took place if you're doing that report. Okay. Good. Well, that's what we planned to talk about today. Any other burning questions out there before we complete? Okay. And again, just for the invitation, don't suffer in silence. If you're having trouble, let me know or let Derek know, and you can do that through their website. Or I think you all have Derek's information. At least he sent out some emails through the listserv. So to make sure you get your questions answered and get it working for yourself. And if you're having a problem, chances are somebody else is having the same problem. So you can help each other by letting us know.
Yeah.
All right. So keep an eye out on the listserv for the next one of these, and we'll go through a few more reports and address a few more issues that come up for folks.
Yes, and if you exit this call and you start testing the reports that we just reviewed, let us know that you're having concerns or that we need to have additional topic discussions the next webinar. So right now we're educating you on how to run the reports. Now you're going to go back and run the reports and rebuttal with some questions or concerns.
Great. And just on a heads up for the VOCA and VAWA, if you get to those and do the reporting guides, you might find it frustrating because they're tedious. Do you want to say something about that, Derek, just so we can...
I'm glad you brought that up. Yes. The reporting guides are 10 to 20 to 30 pages long right now because I want everyone to a few things. Number one, run the reporting manually so they can understand how to get different numbers from different ways. The next part is running those numbers, understanding that you're getting the numbers and they are correct so that we, Osnium and the coalition, I guess, can work towards getting quicker ways to run reporting. So if we have a reporting guide, and I can't remember one of the names, but let's just use SAS, for example. Let's just hope that's one of them. If you were to test out that report, run all those numbers, do your reporting for SAS, and be completely happy with where the numbers came out and everything, let us know. And once we get enough people saying that this report is good, I would go through the next round of reporting and making it what I call a one-click. Now, the word one or the number one is not exactly to perfection, but what it would do is it would run each page on a report all at once, entering in all the parameters that you had to do manually to just give you the numbers that you're looking for, to make things easier. So I have to make things hard for you guys to run reporting, to be able to know that you're getting the right numbers so that I can make it easier later. If I created a one-click right now, people would hit submit, they would get 7, they'd write that down, they'd go for lunch, and then 2 years from now you guys would realize that it's all wrong and you would yell at me. So it's basically a give and take situation. I make you guys go through some effort to confirm things, and then I go through the effort to make things easier for you guys.
Right. So that's, the first time you do those reports, it's going to take some extra time. And so apologies for that. But just what Derek said, once we know that it's generating the correct numbers, then it'll get easier. So in the next 3 to 6 months, it'll get a lot easier. All right. I say we call it a lunch or whatever. Thanks everybody for joining, and all the training videos, if you haven't seen that, they're on e-training with the Coalition's e-training website and on the New Mexico part of the Osnium website. So if you missed the training, in-person training, or want to go back and review things, I broke it into a lot of different small chunks. You can go back and review those training webinars, and we're going to add, like I'm recording today's, I'll do the same thing, so we'll have a growing body of training information. So have a wonderful afternoon. Thanks so much, Derek, for joining us. And
thank you, everyone.
Thanks everybody for being on.